Sorry, guys. Welcome everyone to Brisbane Azure User Group for July. We've got an exciting meetup scheduled for tonight. But before we get into the core presentation, I'm just going to do a quick news roundup. But before we get into that, I really want to put a big thank you out to our sponsors, so Codify and Microsoft. Without these guys, this would not be possible. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate everything that you guys are doing for us. So that's wonderful. Also, a key thing for the Azure Group is getting involved. So we're looking for people to get involved. We're looking for people to want to get up here and contribute and start talking about their experiences with Azure. Doesn't have to be a big thing. Something small is totally fine. We can hook you up with a bunch of other people if that works better for you. So if you are keen, drop us a line. We really want to hear about it. Tonight, we've got Bill Chesnut. So he's going to talk us through application insights. It's going to be awesome. Got a few blank spaces, so let us know if you're keen. There's the email down there. Drop us a line. All right, not a huge amount compared to last month, but there's a few things that have dropped this month. So a couple of memory optimized VMs have dropped for Azure. So they're really good and give you a great performance improvement if you're looking for a memory optimized compute. We got rules engine for front door. So last month we talked about the rules engine for front door. It went into preview. This month it's GA. That's probably one of the shortest turnarounds for products from preview to GA that I've seen. Really quick. So this sort of thing helps you, write some front-end rules and do some things with your headers and redirections and forwarding. Really good. So I personally use Azure Front Door, and it's a great product. I'd recommend anyone who's interested in web or functions or anything like that. It provides a more SaaS-like experience than sorry, mental blank. Then wow. Than the other WAF solutions that you can use in Azure. So it's really easy to hook in the same firewall rule sets that you're already using for some of your IaaS solutions, and it's the same thing. So you can just plug it in and away you go. It's really quite good. So back to IaaS, so Azure Firewall Manager. So Firewall Manager helps you manage the secure vHub and Hub VNet firewall products. There's a couple of things that have changed this month. So threat intelligence-based filtering, integrated partner support, as well as a lot of DNS, FQDN filtering and network rules, forced tunneling for the hub virtual network, and secure virtual hubs has got firewalls for east-west traffic and multiple IP address support now. A bunch of Azure Firewall, different to the previous topic. Azure Firewall features have dropped this month. So custom DNS proxy, FQDN filtering, IP groups, AKS, FQDN tags, and Azure Firewall now HIPAA compliant. Something pretty cool, visual, Azure Maps for Power BI Visual has gone into preview. So this is something that's interesting, check it out, especially if you're into Power BI. There's a bunch of extra stuff that you can do now in Azure. So they've got a bunch of different map types. I've thrown a few up there for you. And I think finally we got Azure file support for advanced threat protection. So there's a bunch of extra intelligence in there on your file storage that will analyze traffic and alert security centers as well as subscription was it subscription administrators of any abnormal behavior on your file storage. So that's pretty cool. Alrighty, so moving right along, we got a few of the standard resources. These are great. Reach out if you're interested. A bit of training that you can plug into, and some of the cool blogs that I follow. If you have some others that you'd prefer, forward it through. Let's see what people like, but they're the ones that I like. So not the only ones though. All right, so tonight, without any further ado, we're going to pass over to Bill Chesnut. Bill Chesnut is going to walk through application insights for application developers. And I've known Bill for quite a while. He's been awesome. He's led a lot of the BizTalk and integration work. So without any further ado, really lucky to have Bill here tonight. Over to you, Bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you should be seeing my slide deck now, hopefully. So welcome everyone tonight, and the topic for tonight is Azure Application Insights for Developers. And kind of one of the things that brought me to this topic, we all good? Yep. Brought me to this topic was that I work with a lot of developers that are so used to working on the local machine that when they start working in an environment where they need to run some of the PaaS services and things like that, there's issues around some of the logging and the logging providers that they can use and things like that. From my BizTalk background, I've always been kind of developing in either a virtual machine, more recently a virtual machine on Azure. So that makes it a lot more, myself a lot more familiar with what these available logging techniques are. So we're going to go through that. There's a few details about myself if you want to get in touch with me on Twitter and my blog. So the agenda for tonight is going to be, we'll look at what Azure Monitor is, because that's kind of a new name for a lot of components that are out there. We'll then dig a little bit deeper into application insights. And then we'll look at a couple of the pieces that are key to the application insights. We'll first look at some of the logging, and we'll look at how you can do it from a application running on your desktop into the application insights in Azure. And then we'll also look at the telemetry. So this is some of the stuff that you kind of get for free from the Azure App Services and things like that. So we'll look at those. And we'll also then look at a few of the queries for the logging and telemetry so that you can actually dig a little deeper, create some alerts and things like that out of the data that you already have. So Azure Monitor is kind of the new name for several of the components. The initial offering of the log analytics in Azure was kind of from the operations manager standpoint. It was more of that telemetry data, more of the data about virtual machines and things like that. But as products have evolved in Azure, a lot of the PaaS ones, they've also have used some of that log store. And even Application Insights still stores its data in the log analytics data store. It's accessed slightly different, but one of the goals they've got over the next bit is to kind of make it easier to combine the data coming out of log analytics and the data coming out of Application Insights to get a better end-to-end picture of what is happening in your application. Because, for example, tonight, the demo I've got set up, I've got front door as my outside. I've got API management next, and then I've got a function app running in a Windows consumption plan, and I've got the same function app running in a Linux consumption plan because the code's .NET Core 3.1. And then both of those are going to a SQL Server running in PaaS in Azure. So we're going to basically try to put as much of that together in the application insights to get an idea of how our application is functioning. But you can see from the Azure Monitor, you've got a lot of different data sources, your application, the different Azure resources, the subscription, the tenant, and any custom you want to do. The storage is there for both the logs and the metrics. And then you can consume it through like the insights of Application Insights, Power BI. You can also use it for the alerting and the auto scaling. And then also you can also integrate out. So you can get that information out of the logs and put it where you want to put it. What we used to do, we had a couple of situations where we were trying to capture when we had more than 5 exceptions in a 5-minute window. And instead of just spamming everybody with email, we used the alerting to send that to a Logic app. And then we had in the Logic app, we did a bit better formatting of that message. And then we wrote that message from the Logic apps into Slack. So we could go into Slack and see when we had failures. And then basically it didn't really clutter our inboxes that much, but it gave us that ability to be able to see what's happened, especially over the non-business hours and things like that. So the other thing we want to talk more about in this particular talk is application insights. And basically we're going to see that we've got information that's coming from our web pages, and we can hook application insights into our client pages. So into the scripting language we're using on the page, then the backend services, and then it can automatically pick up things like these dependency calls. So external services, background services, SQL. When I was working on this, I noticed that I'm using the managed identity of the function app to open a connection to SQL. So it was actually picking up as a dependent service that call to go off and get a token. So it actually had a call there to get the token. So it was seeing all of our application. And we've used this in the product that 6pivot has. We've got a product called Cloud Control. We've used this to detect an issue we had in SQL. We had certain queries in SQL that were running really, really slow, and we were able to look at the application map feature of Application Insights and determine what was happening. And again, from Application Insights, we can go to alerts, we can go to Power BI, we can go into Visual Studio, and again, we can do all of this stuff. Basically, I'm taking more of the developer's view of this tonight. So it's more of how did the developer get to exceptions that have happened and things like that. So that's kind of the piece I want to concentrate on. So let's have our first demo, and I'm going to basically in this I want to show. So I've got a bunch of stuff set up here. I've got my application insights. I've got my SQL database. I've got the front door, all those kind of things set up. One of the things you might notice, there's a second resource group I've used. There is a limitation at the moment that you cannot have a app service plan for Windows and an app service plan for Linux in the same resource group. Didn't realize that was the case until about 3 or 4 weeks ago at a client. We were doing some stuff and it wouldn't let us create a Linux app service plan because we already had a Windows one there. So just a kind of a new thing for beginners. So let's go, and the first thing I want to show is an application map. So to give you an idea of where we're going to get to in this is the application map of what I'm running for the demo. This is my API management instance, and this is my Windows function, and this is my Linux function, and I'm calling off to a SQL database here. It hasn't picked up any of those other calls at the moment. I may not have thrown enough traffic at it at the moment to do that, but basically that's one of the application map features that we can get out of that. We can also go in there and we've got some live metrics, and this is, I'm going to talk as a developer, from a developer's point of view, I'm going to talk more about these live metrics because that's one of the things that I get complaints from with developers is that Application Insights because the log ingestion comes through the log analytics workspace, there is a delay, and it can be, originally it was almost 10 minutes. Now it's probably in the 2 to 3, maybe 4-minute window. But again, the live metrics is live. I can click that and I can see things are happening. We're going to go through all of this in another one of the demos, but I just wanted to kind of set all of this up for everyone. And then we also have just the logs that we can do searching through and things like that. So, and what I've done is I set up some exceptions by just messing around with the SQL firewalls. So prevented the functions from being able to talk to SQL. So back to the dashboard there, and let's hop back to the slides real quick. And because I don't have that many slides, so I want to spend most of the time in the demo. So for logging, what I wanted to do is, one of the things that they've done a pretty good job of is having logging extensions for a lot of the common logging providers. So if you look at the new .NET Core, there's the iLogger. There's an extension there that will log those calls to Application Insights, nlog, log4net. Even if you've just been using the system diagnostics tracing, you can actually hook that up by adding a NuGet package to your code, and it automatically puts a listener into your app config to capture those traces and send those off to Application Insights. And there's also a lot of people are familiar with Serialog. There's a lot of people using Serialog to do that kind of stuff. So basically, there's Serialog a sync for Application Insights also. So the next one is a demo of that. So basically what I want to start with is I've got just some very simple console apps. I'm going to move these over to the screen. And basically what I've got is just a standard console app. I've got basically, in this one, I'm using the direct Application Insights telemetry client. And basically I go down through there, I give it the Application Insights instrumentation key. When you create your instance of Application Insights in Azure, you'll get an instrumentation key. And then basically you can use that to write out. I also, in this particular one, just to show you how it worked, I went ahead and I added that trace listener for the system diagnostic to trace so that I can get that information showing up also. So let me just go to real quick and make sure I've got the I've got a different instance of Application Insights. Again, you by default, when you go create like an app service, it wants to create an Application Insights for you. If you've got an application that's got a dozen components, you really want to push all of those to the same instance of Application Insights. But again, it's done by that telemetry, the instrumentation key. But what I want to do is I want to go in here and I want to just do a refresh on this. And what we'll see initially is that I've got just the trace type selected. I can go here and I can select everything. And we do that, we'll see that we've had 10 trace messages, we've had 4 exceptions. So if I hop back into that Application Insight test there, and it's just a console app, so I'll start it. And of course, the little window pops up somewhere else, but I'll basically finish off that. And we'll see that you can actually see down here in the debug window the Application Insights telemetry that was sent. And again, if we go back there now to the component in here, do a refresh, we're not going to see it yet. It takes a little while to get there. I haven't got the the live metrics kind of hooked up for that console app, but I'll show you a little bit later on some of the live metrics coming out of the functions and things like that. But if we sat here, it will come into this, and we'll come back to this in a minute. The other one I want to show you is basically just a basic app that's got Serilog in it. So basically, if we think about it, we've basically inside of the main, we've got the Serilog, we've got a NuGet package loaded for Serilog, and basically that'll write the messages out to the console and out to a log file. So if I run that, we'll kind of see, once I figure out where the Windows popping, of course, over on a different screen. So we'll see we've got that logging information showing up there. This is not going anywhere. It's just going to the local file. So the next piece we want to look at for logging is how we use Serilog and Application Insights together. So basically, we've just added that right to Application Insights with a couple of kind of default parameters there. And we do exactly the same logging we were doing with Serilog before, but now it's being output to Application Insights. So if I run that, again, the window's the same. My watch has decided to pick up on my question. And we'll see that we do now see that application telemetry in that debug window below. And let's hop back to our screen here and do a refresh. And again, because it takes a few minutes for that information to get up there, you won't see it initially. You can hook up the live metrics to those. For console apps, it's a little bit harder, but basically it's a matter of setting up some of that. Visual Studio does have, which we'll see a little bit later on, you can see that they'll be on, if I have the Application Insights configured into like a web app or an API, there's a drop-down box here that'll allow me to go off to Application Insights directly inside of Visual Studio, so I wouldn't have to hop over to the window here. And yeah, of course, because of last night when I was doing this, it was fairly quick. Tonight, of course, while it's a demo, it takes a little bit longer to do. But we'll come back to that in a minute when we start talking about some of the telemetry side of things. And let's hop back to the slides. So for the telemetry, this is where you kind of get the benefit of all of the work they've done with Application Insights, because what you can do is you can hook this telemetry up for an app service in Azure. And basically it's just a matter of selecting your instance of Application Insights and basically configuring the instrumentation key, and off you go. You can also do this same telemetry for your IIS servers. So if you've got IIS running in a virtual machine on Azure, you can set up the Application Insights piece in there for the telemetry, and you actually don't have to touch any of your code. So it doesn't actually modify your code. The telemetry basically hooks in through IIS in both the app services and your own IIS server. You can, if you are running on a different environment, say something like a Linux web server of some sort, or an app service plan that's Linux in Azure, you can add the telemetry pieces. There are NuGet packages, and there's a little bit of startup code that you need to add to those to be able to do that telemetry. And again, all you need to do is go out to the docs.microsoft.com and search for Application Insights Telemetry, and it'll basically walk you through all of the steps you need to do to basically get that set up so that it's capturing all of the telemetry for you. Because that's the nice thing is that you can see the calls coming in to your application. And then also it does that dependency. So, and this is the one thing that is really nice to see that map that we looked at. We saw that dependency happening, and that we didn't have to do anything to our code to make that happen. That was done in the app service, and basically it was able to detect that call off to SQL, calls off to other websites, all of those kind of things. And you can also basically hook it into the any of your front-end client code. And they've got host diagnostics for Docker and Azure. So let's go have a look at what that really looks like. So I got, and I'm going to spend most of the time in this demo here. Let me hop back to the. So if we go back to our dashboard and open up our, let's see, we'll pick the function app, and basically I'll open that in a new tab. And that'll open another window for Azure. And basically, this is a function app that I would just basically created through the portal. And then basically, we can see down here, there is settings for application insights. And basically, I haven't turned on everything yet, but basically, you can turn on the application insights here, and basically you need to pick your it's already going to my BAUG application insights instance, because when I deployed my function, what I did in the configuration settings, actually let me cancel there, I'll go ahead and apply that. And it's just going to. And then when I deployed through that, I made sure that I inserted into here my application insights instrumentation key. So that way that the code that I've got would pick up that application insights instrumentation key. And let me just bring up. And then what we can see is that I've got a, if you're not familiar with VS Code, there's a REST client there that we can see that we can send some requests. So I'm going to send them through API management to begin with into my product. So I just do a send request. And if I go back out there now, what we can see in the live metrics. So there's a live message coming through. That's exactly right now. And that's basically where I ran that call to that function. And you'll see that there's a host instance, and then there's the product function running. I've got a piece of code inside the product function that is running my going through and listing all the headers that are in there. And so I'm able to basically see, oh, sorry about that, the wrong. So you're able to see all those headers, what's being put out there. And then I've gone off and got an access token. And then basically I finished my call, and the calls come back to there with the products. If you're interested, this is just the sample database loaded up in SQL Server so that I could do some queries against it. And that's basically, then I'll go through my Linux version of the web server and I'll send that request. It shows up slightly different here because I do have some of the tracing features turned on in API management for this one. So you'll see a little bit there, but not a whole lot of difference from that point of view. If we go back to the live metrics, at the moment I'm not getting the live metrics from the Linux. I ran into an issue trying to set some of that up, but basically I just wanted the two different ones out there. They are running the same code. I've just got to add a few more things to the code to do that. There are a couple of things that don't work as well. You'll notice that some of that stuff did come in, but that's from just very simple ones from the main the Windows version of the function. Let me just bring up that one of those copies of Visual Studio, and I will close that solution. And I want to open that one. And basically, this is I've got a API built, and this is the product function. So its function name is product. I'm going in there, just logging some information, and then I get my configuration, and I'm going off through there, and we can see that just doing a fairly simple SQL query. One of the features I did want to show real quick, it's not really related to application insights, but if we go back to my VS Code, and everybody knows about SQL injection. So just to show you one of the simple features that you can have with Front Door is, so I've gone here and I've just taken and I've added a parameter to the end of my function call in API management that's semicolon delete from users, what somebody would do with a SQL injection. Because this is going through Azure Front Door, I can run that, send that request, and we'll see if you go look at that HTML, it says that the request was blocked. And that's all I did was enable the default rules in Front Door, and that was able to block those requests. So what we'll do now is go and spend a little bit more time in application insights. So if we go back here to the logs, or actually let's go back to the application map and see what happens when we refresh that. So now you actually are starting to see the token retrieval. So there's basically, and if I change that to say the last 4 hours, you'll see a little bit more data. And for some reason it comes up with 2 instances of that, but you'll see there's been 27 calls to the Linux web function, 29 calls to the Windows one. The average time is 2.3 seconds for those calls. There should be more in there than that. But again, how it goes through that, and you can view details of that through there. But most of the developers want to see what the data really looks like. And what we do is we'll go in here to the search and we'll go to refresh. And you can see that basically I've got a lot of data here. The oldest one of those is about 3 minutes ago. And we'll see that we've got, over the last 24 hours, we've had 58 exceptions. So what I can do is for any of these things, I can go in here and I can select just the exceptions. And when they come back up, you'll see that, okay, there's my exceptions. And if I click on that exception, I get some details around that exception. It says, and I can do here, and I can show the whole message. It says, cannot open server, requested by logon, client IP address is not allowed to access a server. It's pretty straightforward on that. And you can see that it came through API management into my backend, and I see that exception. I can show all the details about that. So it came through the Azure Function SDK, the cloud service, the cloud role name, which basically is my app service, is BAUG. And let's see, it assigned a problem ID to it. There's some custom properties about error executing SQL query. There's a call stack. One of the other neat features is there is the available telemetry 5 minutes before and after. So if I click on that, we'll see that basically there is the telemetry around what was happening to that. So when it got the error, And you can, a lot of times you might, so there's my call, the call to SQL and things like that. So let me just go back. You've also what happened before and after this exception in the user flows. And you'll see that there's the SQL client exception, operation ended, there's the calls. So it gives you a lot of good information around what's happened. But again, we're going to dig into just a little bit later on, we'll dig into a little bit more of the how we do queries against this. I'm kind of want to show just what's available out of the box here first. So again, I'll go back to select all. That gets me all of those events, and we can see if we just pick up, let's go scroll down through here and just find one of that. There is a lot of information coming out of the function runtime that's being pushed into here. Here's one of them coming out of my code because that's basically that dumping out the header information. And so I can see here that it's from the BAU G2, which is my Linux version of that. And then basically the original format was header key value. And then basically it put out those properties. So their TLS version 1.2, that was one of the header items. So you can see all of those type of things in there. Again, when you're comparing to some of the other products, it may not be as easy to use to start with, but you tend to get pretty used to doing this. And then so you'll see over here is the rest of those records. So my product succeeded, and then if we go back here, there are the different headers that were supplied as part of it. And again, it depends on whether I'm coming through API management or I'm coming all the way through from front door, how many different headers that are available to me. And so, but again, that's, if you look here, there's the X forward header that came, I think that came out of probably front door that put that in the stream, and that basically has my IP address from my home internet connection. So all of those things are there. We can also narrow down things to say, okay, let's just look at the requests that came through. And you'll see there is a request that came through to my Linux web service. Here's one that came through to API management. And then there's to my Windows function. That's the API management call that drove that. So you could actually put together a really good picture of it flowing from API management to my function, and then with the dependency. So if we go up here and select the dependencies and the request together, you can see that it comes through here. It does that get, and then it goes off to the website. And this one here is where it gets the token. So if you'll see, the dependency name is MSI token. So you can see all of that flow in here pretty well. And again, I didn't put much in my code. It was basically just wiring up application insights to my app service plan. I can put the stuff in the code for like the Linux ones, but it puts a lot of that information in there right off the bat. So here again is the API management, and that's basically my direct call. Okay, so how are we going for time? We're going not too bad.
Hey,
so
Bill,
again,
we do have a question.
Yes. Okay.
This may be addressed when you talk about the more advanced queries, but from Johannes, yeah. He's asked, given you have a web app using Azure Active Directory, how do you display the names of users in App Insights? We seem to only get one user at any time.
So of the user coming through. I'd have to look at that because this one I wasn't using any authentication, so I don't have any users coming through here. You might have to actually log that information out specifically. And it shouldn't be, so it would be coming through. I know that one of the other customers I'm working with at the moment is using Azure B2C. And basically that user information is coming through in the token and they're able to look at that. But I haven't really tried to do the kind of the Windows authentication of the function to basically get that information. But you should be able to, in that token, I'm hoping. I know that in API management, you can crack the tokens open and have a look at what's in there. So get their email address and things like that from that point. So you could log it at that point from API management, but you should be able to do exactly the same thing inside of your code. Okay, so let's hop back to the slides real quick and just talk about the queries. So, and of course, we've had to come up with a new query language. We couldn't settle for SQL or anything like that. So we've got Custo. And basically, it takes you a little bit of time to get your head around this. Believe me, I've worked with it a little while and it does seem a little bit different than most. But basically, in Application Insights, you've got these kind of different buckets. So you'll see all the traces in there, all the requests in there, performance counters in there, page views, exceptions, dependencies, custom metrics, custom events, that if you've done your own events, browser timings, availability results. And again, this particular query here is just going after the requests. And you can look at the timestamp, the role name, things like that. So let's dig into a little bit of the queries involved with this, because this is one of the big things that most people have issues with, is basically getting the information back out. So let's go into here and we'll say that what I've done in this one, I've gone into the log analytics workspace. This is a little bit of precursor to what we're going to do in the application insights queries. But basically what I've done is I've pulled the Azure diagnostics for front door. And what I want to do is I want to look at all the calls that have come through front door that didn't get a 200. So let me run that query again. And basically that's going to go out there and pull the data. And those are all of the front door queries that didn't get a 200. So I think this one's probably one of those 500 queries that I got. So, and what you could do is you can take some of this data and merge it with some of the other data that you want to look at. So we'll go back here to search. And if I select just the exceptions, or select all, select just the exceptions here, and then I click logs. What that's doing, it's taking me in the actual query language and showing me the query that it used to find those. And basically what I did, because I've got time range set in the query, it's basically said, okay, I want to go to the application insights exceptions. And then if I just highlight just the exceptions, I can run that and that will get everything that's out there. But what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that the item type is exception. Then it's also using this where clause to basically say the last 24 hours. And then I'm getting the top 100 out of that. So I could, if I take away that, and the nice thing is I can just highlight that first part of the query and I can run that. And you'll see that we've got a few, we got a different exception down there. Because I had the app service turned off, so I've got a connection failure request. So that happened from that. That's the exception I got there. But again, I can do a lot of different queries from this. And let me just bring up. So one of the things I could do is that in my console app, and we'll go back over here to this search and go into its logs. It's a different instance of Application Insight. That's the only thing that's really different. And you'll notice if you want data from trace, request, page views, all of these things, it does a union. But I'm just going to paste in a query that I had from before. That's going to go out there, and it's going to, and if you look at the trace, what happens is a lot of the trace data that comes from your logging tools, so like Serilog and things like that, ends up in that custom dimension. And this is what gets most people when they're trying to do queries against Application Insights is I want to find when a variable is a certain value, or basically what's caused that, or it's like the message template. So what you have to do is you do an extend, and I'm saying I want to look for the A value, and I go into my custom dimension and get the A. And then basically and then I want to display the data when that value equals 10. And then I can do it by timestamp order. So I run that again. Oh, actually, you got to highlight. This gets annoying after a while if you forget to highlight the query. But basically there is that all of those logging messages for that particular piece. Now what I could do, I could go down here and also do another query inside of here that looks at the exceptions. So I just double click and it brings up, all I need to query the exceptions is just to highlight exceptions and hit run. And you'll see that I've got some divide by zero exceptions. It tells me what application it was, things like that, the severity of it, and all the details about the exception. And then anything else, so you get a little bit more information about that. Because I'm hopping through a couple of different products, I'm losing some of the client IP addresses and things like that. But it does show you the instrumentation key and things like that, all of those pieces relevant to that. Now, if I go back to my other one, where this is the one that I've got my SQL app into, I can go here and I could come to the bottom and I can go in here and say dependencies. I run that query, and that's going to show my dependencies. And we'll see that one of the dependencies that's showing up is coming out of API management. So it's got a dependency on the backend service that API management's calling. And then I've got my SQL. If you open that up, you can see some more of that SQL. You can actually see some of the data that's coming through, because I turned on some pieces inside of Application Insights to turn on a few more of those pieces, and it's just the configuration inside of the app service. And it tells me the duration that came in, and then some more custom dimension information in there about that record. And again, you could go through there and you could create an alert. So basically we would have if we wanted a dependency, let's see, where, let's go look at one of those SQL ones. Actually, no, that's the, so, and if you wanted to see like the name of the SQL connection, you would say something like name contains BAUG-SQL. So if I want to see those for a particular SQL server, I can run that. Why is that? Let's go back and run that again. and figure out what I did on that. Oh, it should be name. So let's try putting some parens around that and see what that. Oh, haven't you noticed I can't type? I knew that should work. I just can't type. Okay, we'll run that again. So now basically I have all of the queries for the dependency queries for that SQL server, and I can go out here and I could go in and check for any of them that have a duration. And then I can do a duration greater than, I think this will do, let's see what happens when I put 500 in there. Okay, so that's basically showing me any of them that have a duration of over 500, because you may want to do a report. So you can see that during your busy times, your duration for your SQL calls go up. Or if you're starting to look for explicitly what query, the nice thing is that the way I've got that in there, I could now go in to here and be able to look at this custom data. Now that's the exception. That explains why it probably had a long duration. But with the other ones, I could go in and look. Let's go look at one of the other ones of these and see if they're all exceptions. I don't think they are. But yeah, they are. Okay, so let's go and try less than 500. And run the query. Open that. And you'll see that you have that select in there. So you'll be able to put that stuff together to where you're can be able to look at, okay, the queries that are taking too long are this particular type of query. The other queries may be taking less. So you can start doing more data analysis there. And again, it's just because that I've hooked up Application Insights into my app service that's running my function. And I've turned on the Application Insights telemetry by adding the key to it. So again, you can do all those same things also with your traces. So if we just go here and go trace, we can see all of the traces, and we can scroll over and we can see all of the data that's supplied for the trace. So you can look at a particular web service that you're trying to look at. But you'll notice, see that the cloud role name is has a 2 there because that's the Linux one, that's the Windows one, but the app name is the same. And then you can start looking, you can dig into this custom dimension stuff here by going over here and opening up, and then open that up, and you can see all of the information in there. And again, this is some of the stuff that's coming out of the function, to where you've got, it's basically acquiring a lock for that. So let's go back to, let's go and close that down, close that one down, and basically go to one of the ones that I did where I was looking at some of the headers. So there's one of them I wrote. Basically, you can go in there and basically, if you're trying to look at particular headers, that's a property that's zip deflate. You got all the other headers in there. One of the things they've done with, you can see all of those pieces in there. There's extra headers that get added as part of the front door side of things. But again, and then you can take all of those, the data out of these queries and use them to create alerts. I'm not going to spend any time tonight looking at the alerting because that's probably a completely different kind of talk, because it goes into a lot more detail about that. They are in the process of adding application insights to more of the Azure properties. So like initially API management had log analytics. They didn't have API management. They've added, they've added application insights to API management. But what they're also doing is they're trying to make it easier to go through all of the different logs. And what they've done here is that you go up here and you, if you go into the log analytics workspace, you select your scope. And what it does is it shows you all of the resources in your subscription. And but you've only, at the moment, you can only select a single scope. So we could select our application insights, or we can select our API management, apply that to the scope, and then we'll see that we've got over here, we've got some sample queries, but what we could do is, I think if I go and just highlight the Azure Diagnostics. So I do have Azure Diagnostics coming out of the API management, and you'll see there it's basically, it's a gateway log, and that's the call coming from there, the caller IP address, where it's coming from. And I know this by work I've been doing lately. This is Azure Front Door. So that's the IP address range of Azure Front Door. So the idea is eventually you're going to be able to query from a lot of different sources in these queries to be able to put together this information and get a call came into Front Door, went to API management, went to my application, went to SQL, went to another API, and have that full end-to-end processing in there and be able to look at that call from end to end. And again, you may need to do some correlation and things like that, but there are some IDs that you can use in both API management and Front Door for doing that. But again, this is kind of just to give everybody a little bit of an idea of what you can do with application insights without a lot of work. Let me go back to the, so basically in here, this is my code for my function. And what I've done is I've added the NuGet package to this for, actually I don't have any of the application insights in this at all. Right now I've got my SQL, I've got my authentication and my .NET SDK. But what I can do is if I want to put a bit more of the application insights pieces in, you'll notice here in your solution there is a connected services. If I double click on that and I can add application insights. It's going to go out to my subscription and basically look for my instance of API management. I go next. It's going to put it into a local secrets file so that when I'm debugging locally, it's able to do that. So I'll do next. And then basically it'll add those to my solution. So it's installing a few extra NuGet packages to that. And close that. And so now if I even just run this locally, and of course if function runtime comes up by itself over and over there. So there's my function runtime. And it's waiting for me to call it. So let's go out here real quick and do a couple of calls. And you'll see there's some logging information in there, but then we can go to application insights here. And I think I've got to pick the same instance of application. Actually, it's here. It's got the, let's try that and see if it narrows it down any. Yeah, for some reason I've got, there, I can use that. And then I can just hit. And basically there's some of that same view that we had from Log Analytics, or from the application insights in there. And then there is, trying to remember, they did some stuff. They've been changing a couple of these windows around for basically being able to do live metrics directly from Visual Studio. But again, these are not very, these are about 10 minutes old. So let's see what happens if we refresh that. Okay, so let's go back and go to here again, go to my live metrics. And that should have shown those calls. Let's just try that again real quick. I'll actually go through the send a few of those up there and then go and have a quick look. No, let's just do a, go out and do a search, come back into the live metrics. And I think it's something to do with the way I've got it set up in on the developer piece. I've done a lot of this not in .NET Core, and so that's one of the issues I did have a little bit, is some of the stuff around .NET Core. But one of the things that it will give you inside of your code, if it's all wired up correctly, and it's not that hard to do, but it will actually detect, and in this line here in Visual Studio, if you've got an exception that it sees in the application insights in Azure, it will actually list it here. You can click on it. It will take you to the exception in Azure and give you a pointer of where it was in your code, where it exceptioned. So there's a lot of neat stuff that they've hooked up to the application insights, because it is primarily a developer focused tool. I'm not sure why it's not doing it in the .NET Core at the moment. I must have something in the wrong, something not in the right configuration file or something. But basically, it will do that. Let's hop back to the slides and see. So again, in summary, do we have any questions while I just came out of the demo?
No real questions. We've got a couple of people who posted some good links though. So somebody anonymous posted the links to the IT Ops Talk blog, which was kind of cool. And then Todd Whitehead also said for tracing user-specific session info, you can also have a look at a link there that he's put to the docs on Microsoft. So.
So again, we've looked a bit about Azure Monitor, which is now the combination of a lot of those pieces, specifically at Application Insights. For logging, telemetry, and then a little bit at the queries. Again, I think the queries are where most people come unstuck. They go into the search. They can't find what they're looking for because they're trying to use the field name. And again, a little bit different to some of the other products, the way that does it, because it puts it into that custom dimension, because those are the fields for that particular logging record. But again, you can get used to those queries. You can also take those queries and create dashboards out of those. So if you get those, you can create pie charts, you can create graphs, all of those kind of things from those queries. And it's just a matter of pinning those to a dashboard. And then you can have some kind of real-time analytics coming out of the stuff that you're running in there. And again, it's charged, the Application Insights is charged really just by gigabytes of log data. So it's fairly economical, especially from a developer point of view. Again, when you get to a production environment, you may want to turn off the debugging side of things so it's not being collected. And again, that's in the app settings or the app config. You can set the level of logging, or if you're using something like Serilog, you can do that with Serilog or the other tools that are used for logging. But again, it allows you to do that debugging, and it also, the big difference is it allows you, especially when you're using PaaS services, to put some of that logging information together. So I can get my API management, application insight information coming into there alongside of my function, so that I can see exactly what's happening in that kind of end-to-end flow. So that's pretty much what I had. There are my contact details. And thanks everyone for attending tonight.
Great job, Bill. Thanks. I'm just trying to share. I think you might have to stop sharing.
Okay. Let me just figure out. Oh, over here. Hold on. Stop presenting. There we go.
Okay, great. So then, I see what the problem is. Okay. So, yeah, fantastic. That was an excellent session, Bill, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed that. And you know, as people who have been to this group before, when it was still a live event, as in live in real life, attending in person, you know that we always used to show appreciation to our speakers for all the time that they put in. And just because we're running virtual events right now doesn't mean we're going to forego with those formalities. So Bill, thanks very much for taking all the time put together, and I hope that you can enjoy your bottle of wine here.
Thank you very much, Dan. My green screen really is not making the bottle appear too well, but thank you very much.
Excellent. So basically, we will have a session next month. I can't tell you who it is yet, even though I know who it is because he's just getting clearance from his employer to talk about. But I can tell you that the subject will be centered around API management. So do keep an eye up on the Meetup site because we will publish and announce that information when it becomes available. And this session tonight has been recorded. So give me a few days, probably over the weekend at some point, I'll get it posted up on our YouTube channel, which was Damien showed you in the slide at the beginning of the session tonight. And also we'll put the link up on the Meetup site as well, so that you can ingest this in your own time. So with that, Damien, I don't know if you got anything else to add, but
Thanks everyone very much. That's exactly what Bill said.
Great. So
thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Damien. And good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.